The Charlotte Hornets had a very productive season last year. Of course, they did not make the playoffs and they ultimately lost in the play-in games. They were a very good team, especially before the injuries of Gordon Hayward and LaMelo Ball. Showed themselves to be a very competitive team within the Eastern Conference. Showed that they have some players on their bench that can be invaluable pieces to this team moving forward. And got another year of development out of LaMelo Ball, out of PJ Washington, out of Miles Bridges, and have shown now that they can be a legitimate team that can compete for the playoffs moving forward in the Eastern Conference. Today I want to talk about the offseason of the Charlotte Hornets, and more specifically, those offseason changes and how they result in the impact on this team moving into the season, and what I expect from the Charlotte Hornets in the 2021-22 season. And so starting off with their offseason moves, of course, the most notable departures was that of their guards in Devonte Graham and Malik Monk. They also saw Cody Zeller leave, which I'm sure a lot of Charlotte Hornets fans were more than happy about, while some more depth pieces in Caleb Martin, Brad Wanamaker, and Bismack Biyombo also left the group. But there definitely wasn't a lack of incomings to this team as well. Mason Plumlee is the new starting center, which sure is not anywhere near as good of a center as many Charlotte Hornets fans would have liked, but nonetheless he is now in. Kelly Oubre is the marquee signing of the summer, as he will come in and give them a very good amount of depth off of the bench. You're now talking about Kelly Oubre and Miles Bridges being off of the bench, starting off from day one, which is absolutely brilliant. Kai Jones and James Bouknight were brought in via the draft. Kai Jones likely to be backup center and potentially the center of the future for this group, and then Ish Smith replaces the void at the guard position to be the backup to LaMelo Ball. So nothing overly significant from the Charlotte Hornets in terms of a Gordon Hayward type signing like the year previous, but still some notable moves, of course, with Devonte Graham and Malik Monk going out, and Kelly Oubre coming in, a couple of important draft pieces, and then Mason Plumlee coming in to be the new starting center. So I want to start with that center position, because that, of course, was the biggest weakness for the Charlotte Hornets last season. It was the glaring weak spot on the Charlotte Hornets team. Cody Zeller is just not a competent starting NBA center. There's a reason he's now the backup in Portland. No one wants him as their starter. And Mason Plumlee isn't completely different in the fact that he isn't a great starter. He is definitely an under-average starter, but he is a lot better than Cody Zeller. I like him more as a rebounder. I like him more defensively, and I especially like him more as a passer at the center spot. So I think he does offer a lot more to you offensively in that regard. It's a better option than Cody Zeller, sure, but that isn't saying much. I would expect Kai Jones to get a bit of minutes here as well, just to try and further his development, because I don't think Mason Plumlee is anywhere near the center of the future for the Charlotte Hornets. They would have much preferred to get Nerlens Noel or Rashawn Holmes via free agency, or Miles Turner via trade, but that never happened, and so Mason Plumlee is where they're at for this upcoming season. It's better than what they had, but it's definitely still the weakest spot in the starting lineup moving forward for the Charlotte Hornets. Back to the guard spots, LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier remain the starting backcourt for the upcoming season. LaMelo Ball will look to have an even better year too in the NBA. And Terry Rozier had a much better season with Charlotte last year than he did the year previous, and has gotten a max extension because of that, much deservedly so. So that backcourt is going to continue to be one of the better backcourts in the league. You're not necessarily competing with them being a top 5 backcourt in the league, but nonetheless, LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier is a solid backcourt. They can both handle the ball, they can both score, they can both play make. They're both combo guards in the sense that either of them can play at the 1 or at the 2. LaMelo Ball, of course, will man most of the minutes at the 1 because he is definitely the superior playmaker, but Terry Rozier will certainly get some minutes at the point guard spot as well when LaMelo Ball sees himself on the bench. A very solid backcourt there for the Charlotte Hornets. Gordon Hayward will return back as the starting small forward back from his injury last season. And the main thing just for him is health. He's still a borderline all-star when he's healthy, and was a very important part of this team when healthy last season. He just can't stay healthy. He can't play 60, 70 plus games a season, depending on the length of season. 70 games, of course, is where he would like to get him to this year in an 82-game season. But it just doesn't seem to be something that Gordon Hayward can do anymore at this point in time in his career, and injuries were not anywhere near as much of a concern for him earlier on in his career, but the last 3 or 4 years certainly have been, and some of it's just been fluke accidents. It's not necessarily to any fault of Gordon Hayward, but at the end of the day, It just seems to be a trend with him, and it's not something that you can ignore. It's not a knock against Gordon Hayward. It's just the reality of it. It's something that Charlotte Hornets expectations have to be based around, because that's just the reality of Gordon Hayward at this point in time in his career more often than not. If Gordon Hayward can stay healthy, this team is definitely a lot more successful and sees themselves further up in the standings. But you kind of have to account for the fact that you're going to have some missed time from him, which is probably part of why Kelly Oubre was signed. So now you have Kelly Oubre and Miles Bridges who can play those forward spots off the bench. PJ Washington will retain his spot as a starting power forward. There is good depth behind him, so if he doesn't play well, Miles Bridges could definitely sneak into that role for as well as he played last year. But I would expect PJ Washington will remain that starting power forward for this group. When you're looking at the bench, the guard depth is definitely not as good as you would like it to be. It's certainly a lot weaker than it was last year when you had Devonte Graham and you had Malik Monk. Ish Smith was brought in, who's a fine backup point guard. It's not a great backup point guard, but he's fine. He does the job. He has a lot of experience. He's a fine guy. He can run your offense a little bit, distribute a little bit. But Terry Rozier will end up seeing a bit of time at the point guard spot as well. I would expect LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier's minutes maybe staggered a little bit, depending on how much they want to play Ish Smith at the point guard spot, as opposed to having Terry run the 1 and then have Bouknight or Kelly Oubre run the 2 off of the bench. And that's the options they have now with this group. They can run James Bouknight and have him play at the 2 off of the bench and see how he does in his first season in the NBA, or they can also slide up Kelly Oubre and have him play some minutes at the 2. He can also play some minutes at the 3, and then the same can be said for Miles Bridges. He can play some minutes at the 3 or at the 4, and Wes and Wundu's there as well to give them some forward depth if they need. So they do have a lot of options within those 2, 3, 4 positions to be able to slide some guys up and down a spot, to be able to fill out their rotations as they feel is best fit on the given night or based on individual performances. I think having Kelly Oubre and Miles Bridges off of the bench is going to be extremely valuable, like I said, for that versatility in lineups, and just for pure production's sake, or if any injuries occur, which is also relevant with Gordon Hayward ahead of them. Kelly Oubre had a down start to the year last year, certainly, but he seems very invigorated to be back in a situation that isn't in Golden State. He wants to get back to the level of production he was showing in Phoenix, have a good bounce back year this upcoming season. And Miles Bridges showed that he's a pretty darn good NBA player last year when he was starting in the absence of Gordon Hayward, averaging around 20 points per night when he was starting. He was an absolutely extremely impactful player for the Charlotte Hornets and will continue to do that for this upcoming season. And I would expect him to log heavy minutes off of the Charlotte Hornets bench, approaching 30 minutes a night, or at least that's what he should be getting, because he certainly earned that last season. As mentioned, Kai Jones is going to remain the backup center for the Charlotte Hornets group. Whether he is the center of the future for this group remains to be seen, but I would expect him to get some minutes there this upcoming season as he continues his development just into the NBA in his rookie season. LaMelo Ball is going to be the MVP and the most improved player for this group for me in this upcoming season. He had an absolutely brilliant rookie year, was fully deserving of winning Rookie of the Year, and I would expect that he's going to take another step forward in year 2. And Miles Bridges is the X factor for me. You could argue Gordon Hayward is the X factor as well, and whether he can stay healthy. But I think if the Charlotte Hornets can get the Miles Bridges we saw in the starting lineup last year and get that level of production and efficiency on both ends of the floor, then this is going to be a very strong bench and depth group for the Charlotte Hornets. Last year, the Charlotte Hornets did end up finishing in the 10 seed. They were up and around 4 or 5 until those injuries. And then those injuries, of course, hurt, because whenever you lose your 2 best players, you're going to struggle. But they kept themselves into the play-in games. They ultimately did not make the playoffs, but I do have them finishing in and around a similar spot this year, and around the 9 seed, and that is even if they are healthy. Maybe if Gordon Hayward is healthy, they slide up a couple of spots, but ultimately this is just a much improved Eastern Conference. You're talking about Toronto being back home and probably having a better season than they did last year, assuming they don't have to deal with this many protocol things. Boston will look to be better. You have Chicago as a much better team. There's just a lot of improvement within this Eastern Conference. So the Charlotte Hornets are going to be good again. They're going to be very competitive, and they have just as good a shot as getting into the playoffs as some of those teams around them. But I do have them being 9th in the play-in games, but still being a very competitive and very fun team to watch in this upcoming season. That being said, let me know down in the comment section where you guys think the Charlotte Hornets team is going to end up at the end of the season, what you think of their offseason moves, and how you think this team is going to fare in the upcoming 2021-22 season. That being said, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And be sure to click the box on the right-hand side of the screen if you want to see my other 3 season previews that have been released up to this point. And be sure to stay tuned and subscribe to the channel if you want to see the rest of my season previews as we approach the NBA season. That being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.